Good morning, Commissioner Howard. Man, can you give us a sound check, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning. How are you?
Hey, we're doing well. Thanks for asking. Thank you for the sound check.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen.
Executive team, can you give us a sound check, please? Fulton County Executive Team?
Here.
All right, thank you
We're
very
here.
much. We see you.
Waiting till that stops.
All right.
Hold on, I'll tell her you'll come.
Mayor Hurt is hard at work.
Oh,
Good morning, sunshine.
good morning. I'm trying to get my financial disclosure ready today. I don't want to go to the Ethics Commission.
Oh, Lord, no.
Good morning, everybody. This is Joe Lockwood.
Good morning.
Joe, how you doing,
How are you,
brother?
man?
I'm good, my
I'm
man.
good, man.
Look,
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. We're overdue, sir.
Good morning,
Absolutely.
Commissioner Khadijah Abdul Rahman. Can you give us a sound check, please? Do we have anybody else on the line that has not checked in? Give us a sound check, please.
Commissioner Khadijah is on the line.
Good morning. And thank you for
Morning.
that. We should be starting shortly.
You've got Tom Reed here too.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How y'all doing? Madam Clerk?
Morning, I'm Rob Pitts. I chair the Board of Commissioners of Fulton County and like to welcome you to the special call meeting of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. Today is October 1st. It is approximately 10:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll of the Board of Commissioners.
Chairman Rob Pitts.
Present.
Commissioner Liz Hausman.
Present.
Commissioner Bob Ellis.
Present.
Commissioner Lee Morris.
Present.
Vice Chair Natalie Hall. Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr. Commissioner Khadijah Abdul Rahman.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And would you check with the mayor, call the roll for the mayors, please, ma'am?
Yes. City of Alpharetta, Mayor Gilbin.
Present.
City of Atlanta, Mayor Bottoms. Chattahoochee Hills, Mayor Reed.
Present.
College Park, Mayor Motley Broom. East Point, Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Here.
East Point, Mayor Holiday Ingram.
She said,
Here. Good morning. Here.
Fairburn, Mayor Carhurst.
Here.
Hateville, Mayor Hallman.
Tim Young for Alan Holman.
who is that?
Tim Young.
Tim Young.
Okay.
Johns Creek, Mayor
Here.
Barkley. Middleton, Mayor Lockwood.
Present.
Mountain Park, Mayor Steele. Palmetto, Mayor Bodie. Roswell, Mayor Henry.
Present.
Sandy Springs, Mayor Paul. South Fulton, Mayor Edwards. Union City, Mayor Williams.
I'm here.
How many? What? 9 mayors, okay. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, mayors. We will proceed with the agenda as it's printed. I'm assuming everyone has a copy of the agenda. We will proceed as it's printed. First item for discussion is the transportation special purpose local option sales tax. Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So on this one, we're going to ask Jessica Corbett to give you an overview. I think the headlines are that you have made really great progress on projects. Probably the challenge is mostly in intersection improvements, which is to be expected. We were having really good coordination across all of our cities. I sat in on a call last Friday that Jessica put together. And so there's great sharing of information and learning for how to get information to the public. The CID funding is a little bit underwhelming, so we'll speak to that, and either Seth Milliken or someone representing him would be on today's call. So, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for Jessica to give that overview.
Ms. Corbett.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be with you this morning. We do have a couple of slides. If the team can pull those up, I'll just go through them. As the county manager mentioned, we have had a couple of calls with our counterparts. My team manages communications for Fulton County government, and we've had a couple of calls with our counterparts across the cities and have really good discussion. And we're very excited about the engagement that they are leading in your respective jurisdictions, mayors. Next slide, please. So we have, next slide, please. Next. So we have provided a communications toolkit to all of the cities with some fact sheets about the investments that are planned within your jurisdictions. We also, of course, have a list of the projects that are in your cities in case there's any ambiguity. But as you chose those projects, mayors, you are very much aware of them. We have really encouraged our partners across the county, both in our team and throughout the jurisdictions, to share information. And you'll see a couple of samples of some of that work. What we heard back from all of you was that there are cities across Fulton County are holding town hall meetings about the T-Splost referendum. We've seen samples of websites and social media postings. Some of the jurisdictions have created videos. There have also been newsletter articles. We have seen some of the cities are having information tables at things like farmers markets or events that you have in your city centers, as well as community presentations with, organizations, homeowners associations, and the like. Next slide, please. So these are a few samples of some of the work that that we've seen from the cities. I think we have on the left is a graphic from the city of Sandy Springs, kind of just highlighting some of the future projects that would be created with future T-Splost funding. In the right, we have a sample at the bottom from the city of South Fulton about kind of just the T-Splosh referendum. And then at the top is a sample from the city of Roswell about some upcoming public meetings that they are hosting. Next slide, please. So we had a couple of requests. One is, and we actually received a few this morning. We've asked the city's, the communication staff to please share some photos of your current T-Splosh projects. We also, as all of you are aware, have a kind of joint, it's a page built in Socrata, which is a public transparency platform. And we have just asked that all of the cities make sure their projects are updated. And we expect, especially as early voting starts in 12 days, that we will see more community members going to that page and learning about what did their dollars buy in T-Splosh 1. So we just want to make sure that folks are educated about T-Splosh in general, the impact that it's had. And we would encourage your jurisdictions, if you haven't already, to host a public meeting or some kind of engagement to educate voters. I think that the websites and newsletter articles and postings are wonderful, and in some cases that's the best approach. But where it makes sense, we would encourage, some additional engagement just to make sure folks are aware. The voting patterns will be different in this election. This is a municipal election instead of a presidential election. So we, again, we are not here to advocate, but we acknowledge that we have a different dynamic as we go into this election and want to make sure that folks really are aware and educated about what T-Splosh means for Fulton County cities. With that, I'd like to ask Seth Milliken, who's on the line with us, to maybe speak to some of the work that he and his partners are doing as well, and kind of a parallel track of voter education. And then, Mr. Chairman, we could take any questions. Seth, are you able to speak at this time?
Hey, good morning, Jessica. Mr. Chairman, commissioners, mayors, glad to be with y'all this morning. And as Jessica mentioned, I work with the Georgia Transportation Alliance, and we are a nonprofit advocacy organization under the umbrella of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. And we work on all things transportation in the state of Georgia. And we're grateful to partner with Fulton County and 13 cities that are now 14 cities in 2016, as y'all were the first county in Georgia to pass a single county T-Splosh. We're very focused on communicating probably one of the top messages this year, which is that of the 2016 T-Splosh, over 416 projects have been delivered, 92% on budget and 97% on schedule. And I think that's a very important message to deliver to the voters as we are educating them over the next 6 weeks leading into the election. As Jessica mentioned, we are dealing with a little bit of a different environment in 2006 and 2021 than we were in 2016, and very similar to the county because we're interacting with quasi-public organizations and funding these education outreach efforts. We're limited to education only, no advocacy. But a couple of the factors that we're looking at as we're determining who to communicate to and how to communicate to them. Georgia has grown. Obviously, we have more people in Georgia, almost 1 million more people than lived in Georgia at the time of the last census. This is our first major election post-COVID, so to speak. And it's our first major election under the new election rules that were passed by our legislature earlier this year. I mentioned before we were working with 13 cities in 2016. This year we have 14 with our new city of South Fulton. And also we are conducting this election not in conjunction with the city of Atlanta. Those of you that were working with us in 2016 will remember that the city of Atlanta had a similar infrastructure ballot question at the same time. That is not at play this year. So we're anticipating a voter turnout that's going to be much smaller than in 2016. concentrated around those municipal elections. And so we have been partnering very closely with county leadership and city leadership, as well as with Jessica and her team. And I can't say enough about the efforts that are being undertaken by your staff out in each community around Fulton County. We had a great call, as Mr. Anderson mentioned, last Friday, and really excited to see the level of activity that's being undertaken in each city to inform the voters about this T-Splost. And as Dick also mentioned, we've struggled a little bit with the fundraising piece to do the educational marketing that we would like to do. And that just makes the work that your staff is doing in your individual communities that much more important. So we're grateful for that partnership and look forward to continuing that over the next couple of weeks. We're anticipating turnout to be approximately 105,000, give or take a little bit. As I mentioned, we're continuing to coordinate with Jessica and her team, as well as your communication staff throughout all 14 cities across Fulton County. Our goal is still on the educational side to conduct 3 rounds of educational contact through a 501c4 called the Fulton Issues Forum. We would like to, resources allowing, send 3 rounds of direct mail that would go to approximately 69,000 households across Fulton County. That obviously includes more registered voters, that's just households. And then highly targeted social media and digital advertising to those same voters. And again, resources allowing, we would like to accompany that with text and voice communications that would go to approximately 27,000 landlines and 33,000 cell phones. So from a timeline standpoint, I'm preaching to the choir here, but just this is kind of the timeline that we're operating on. We're hopeful to start our initial round of voter contact early next week, as early voting begins on October the 12th. October 22nd will be the last day to request an absentee ballot. And then our last day of early voting will be on October 29th. So we hope to conduct that second round of voter contact sometime around the last week of early voting and continue that into Election Day on November the 2nd. So again, just grateful for this opportunity to partner with the county and the cities here. This is a critical initiative because as Fulton County was the first county to pass a single county T-Splosh, you're also the first county to seek renewal of that T-Splosh. And so we're eager to see your leadership be successful there. We're confident about a good outcome on November the 2nd. So Jessica, thanks for the opportunity to be with y'all this morning, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Seth. And Mr. Chairman, we're, either Seth or I are glad to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Corbett or Mr. Milliken?
Yes, Vince Williams, I have a question.
Mayor Williams, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Look, we have all been discussing this almost a year. I have reached out to several of the partners late August, early September about getting or sharing information to get it to the public. Now we're talking about, and this is all new to me, we're talking about getting started in another week to share with our cities. I'm hearing information about a call that took place. Who was on the call from Union City? None of my key people were on this call. So I'm trying to understand.
Mr. Mayor, I will certainly go back. I believe Ms. Gibbons is the contact person that we had on our invitation list, but I will, and we have also forwarded the link to the toolkit that was distributed, but I will also make sure, mayors, that all of you personally receive that.
Right, that would be good to make sure we get it, because I have Lonnie Ferguson, who is my public services director, and Vivian Lett, who is my marketing and communications. And I met with them 2 days ago. They haven't heard or seen anything. So it's
Thank
important.
You, Mayor, for letting me know.
It's very important that we get this information to be able to share with our voting public. So I'm excited about where we're going with starting next week to start this real big push. But I was hoping that, and really over the conversations we've had over the past few months, that we were going to be getting this information sooner. So, I'm fine. Look, I just need to make sure we are connected with one another, because I've reached out and no one reached back to let me know what was going on. That's all I ask. Just keep me connected.
Thank you, Mayor. I will send in just a moment the information that was shared with all of the folks on this call.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Anyone else? All right,
I have a quick question, please.
Yes, Commissioner Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, mayors. Seth, you mentioned that you think we have a great chance of it passing. Can you just give us an idea of where that opinion comes from? Has there been polling done or any sort of surveys, or are you planning anything like that?
Thank you, Commissioner. Great question. I think what we are looking at is comparing what we're doing this year to the program of work that we executed in 2016, and being able to conduct that targeted voter contact to the folks that we know are going to come out and vote, and being able to capitalize on the success stories that we've seen out of 2016. It's if you go back and look at the top line numbers of the size of the program and the success with which it's been administered, I think that's a very powerful message, and we're counting on being able to capitalize on that.
Okay, and my follow-up question to that is, education costs money. It's nothing that can be done, or some of it can be done freely, but most of it does have some sort of price tag. I know you've been talking to some of our partners, CIDs and whatnot, to help come up with the resources to get this message out. Can you update us on that, please?
Yes, glad to do that. We have been in strong fundraising mode over the last 6 or 8 weeks. Private sector companies have actually stepped up. Our friends in the construction industry and the business community here in the Metro Atlanta area, about twice what they did in 2016. So we've seen real strong response there. We have been talking with our CID partners, and so far the response has been cooperative, and they've been willing to participate, but not at the level that they did in 2016. So that has been a bit of a challenge.
So do you feel like you're going to be able to get the message out with the resources that you have?
At the moment, we are looking at how to adjust that voter contact plan to maximize the resources that we have right now.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? All right, Mr. Betty.
Yes, sir. We'll ask Doug Schuster, who's one of the principals at EMSI, our incident management firm, to give you an update on our COVID response. Just a couple of things to call to your attention. The trends are definitely improving. They're at 169 now on new cases per day, rolling average, which is about half of the high point that they were at. However, that's multiples of where they were previous to the Delta variant. All the cities are showing improvement with the exception of one. The vaccines, as you'll see, are at well above 60% in those eligible. And the good news in that as well is that's a leading county in terms of counties in Georgia. We are going to be shifting our focus back to fixed sites. So we'll detail those plans because we anticipate heavy demand for now the booster shot, since most of the population is eligible for that. So we need to build that capacity back up to 300 or so a day in 4 sites versus 2. But we're going to continue this mobile approach because that's where we're getting a lot of success, particularly reaching folks of color that have not taken the vaccine as of yet. I visited the East Point Annex is a good example for this week, one morning when we were having a site there. That's a good example. We have others where we've not gotten that much support, so we think refocusing is appropriate. And we'll be allocating about $4.5 to $5 million to this effort in the fourth quarter, along with DPH support. So Doug, if you can run through the charts with us quick and answer any questions, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, mayors and council members. I'm glad to be able to share a little bit better news today. As the county manager mentioned, these are our dashboard and kind of the metrics that we track. With testing being a leading indicator, you can see that our testing demand grew over the last 2 months as more symptomatic people presented at our testing centers. Our case trend went up just exponentially through the month of August and peaked about 10 days ago and have started to see a decline where we are right now. These numbers, 169, is still what we would consider unhealthy. There is still Delta variant and COVID in the community, but cases are on the wane. As a little bit lagging after cases comes the hospital resources. I can't stress enough, even though our peak was not as high as the winter, we have so much more non-COVID activity in the hospitals that this peak was actually worse as far as being able to manage open bed space, EMT, paramedic wall times waiting for bed space, and it was, and especially in the critical care units. We are still at a very difficult time within the hospitals, even though our bed census has gone down, because there is so much other stuff, violence, trauma, and non-COVID respiratory illness. It was a very bad August. And so we are still monitoring that, and the state is actually planning with Grady and our partners to address any future waves and get more capacity to the Fulton County area. The lagging indicator is the death toll from COVID-19. We seem to have peaked about a week ago at about 4.7 deaths a day. For a 7-day average, we're down to 3.6. And that kind of follows along with, the peak is about 2 to 3 weeks after our peak in cases. And so we're hoping to see that number go down. One thing I want to mention, I don't have a comparison here, but Fulton County compared to the rest of the state had much lower peaks in comparison in both cases, deaths, and hospitalizations. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we had higher vaccination rates than the rural parts of the state. And so once again, the hospitalizations and deaths are mainly a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Vaccinated folks tend to not progress to the hospital. And so well over 95%, both in CCU admissions and deaths, are from the unvaccinated populations. Next slide. Just a quick look, there's a EPI report that's produced twice a week, and it talks about the percent change from the preceding 14 days. This had gone up for 7 weeks in a row, but now you see the numbers trending downward, and that matches with the information I just showed you. And Palmetto numbers are lower, but they do show a slight increase, and hopefully they'll get with the rest of these municipalities soon. Next slide. We should be crossing the 60% threshold this Saturday for vaccines for Fulton County. And that's compared to 54% for the state. And like I said, this high vaccination rate for Fulton County, while it's not where we want it to be, did result in a much less severe than it could have been Delta variant spread. The county manager did point out that if we applied the vaccines to the eligible population, those eligible for the vaccine, we are at 68% of Fulton County being vaccinated with 1 dose and 62 fully vaccinated. Next slide. So on the left, I just want to talk to you a little bit about our mobile efforts. Since the vaccine demand waned June 1st, we really put a lot of effort into 10 mobile teams going out a day. And the map that you see is color coded based on vaccine uptake. The darker areas are below 20% vaccinated, and the lighter areas are the higher vaccinated area. So we had a very targeted approach. This is just an example of 1 week of the yellow dots being our mobile units out in the communities. We also tried to hit, our goal was 80% into communities of need or vaccine deserts, and 20% into high uptake areas, so we could really get the best of both worlds. On the right-hand side, you see that our mobile units since June 1st have vaccinated 10,182 people at 846 events and 512 unique sites. The number in percentages of the Black population that we vaccinated was 73.5%, and Hispanic 15.5%. And so our goal was to get at least 80% people of color, because that was a lower vaccinated group in the community that we have targeted. We're going to continue to target these areas. We also have our fixed sites that are always available, but our mobile units, our goal was to attack the equity problem, and we have made a difference. Next slide. So we're getting ready to shift. As you all well know, there's been a lot of news media, maybe confusing to some, about the availability of booster shots or third doses. And so our vaccine posture, based on waning demand for first and second shots, is where we were until today is we had 3 fixed locations with a combined capacity of about 200 vaccines a day for our fixed sites. We had Pryor Street downtown, 4700 North Point, and then 57 Stonewall Tell Road. And we had 10 mobile units doing a combined capacity of 750. We had the ability to do 200 at our fixed, 750 at our mobile units. And we had 3 roving strike teams actually walking around vaccine deserts, community of need, and doing outreach. So based on really, every week, every month, we take a pretty close look on, what we're doing and how many vaccines we're getting, and the effectiveness of what we're doing. And so based on the fact of, number one, the need for the community to get booster shots, and the impending approval, possibly of Pfizer being approved for 5 and above, we have shifted some of our workforce capacity back into our fixed locations, and adding a 4th site at Aviation Center, which will open on the 6th. And we're reducing our mobile units from 10 to 4, and to be more targeted and get more bang for the buck for those mobile units. So like I said, our shift really has to do with about booster delivery and the planned expansion to 5 and over. And I really want to stress this. While boosters are important and taking a lot of bandwidth, our priority in area command is still to prioritize first and second doses. That is our way out of the pandemic. And we're going to continue to look at incentives and other ways to garner those groups to get vaccinated. Next slide. This is just a quick slide on the booster response. We've moved to a reservation system through the state VRAS system, which is up and running, and we've had no complaints from the people showing up at our sites this week. It is recommended for people over 65 and in long-term care settings, or people ages 50 to 64 with underlying medical conditions. You may receive and still sign up for, if you're 18 to 49 with underlying medical conditions, or 18 to 64 for increased risk of COVID exposure due to the nature of your work. So you will self-qualify yourself through the registration process. You show up with your registration and you will get your booster dose. I think that's all I got. I'm open for questions.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Let me just add one thing. I've been working with my colleagues in Cobb County, Gwinnett County, DeKalb County, and Clayton County. as well as the Dr. Toomey. And we're looking at a major event on one day when the 5 counties in the metro area would have a huge one-day event where we'll be using sports stars and entertainers and probably $100 gift cards to really have a major event to bring these 5 counties together, targeting Black and brown people in these 5 communities. So stay tuned for more information on that. And we're looking now at Mercedes-Benz Stadium as the location.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Yes.
This is Bill Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, Mayor Edwards.
Yeah. Let me just say this, and you know, a lot of us, especially in the cities in South Fulton, have worked as mayors and government officials, worked very hard to increase our education levels. And we continuously have been making strides in that area with our local schools. However, I'm a little bit dismayed in the fact that I heard that the figure from Dr. Looney, somewhere around 20% of our kids in our school are not vaccinated. So what does that mean? That means the opportunity for face-to-face learning, it gets prohibited. And we find that some of our schools are trending back to what they used to be. That's important because without a good educational system, you know, it'll distract from your economic development. But I never hear figures about, and Doug, you may help me with this, I never hear figures about where we are in terms of the kids. Are we working with the school system and to overcome this and to keep our education going upward? So as we talk about these things, I'd like to add that to see where we are.
It's a great point, Mayor. So just to let you know, I didn't have it in this presentation because I was told to be pithy, but our main partner really since the beginning of the pandemic has been with the 2 school systems in the county. And we really have helped, number one, right from the beginning with their over 65s, and then special events at Mercedes-Benz. And our partnership with the schools has really been incredible. And to your point, with children in the so we have continued even through this day to send our mobile units to schools. We've had we've trial run some incentive events at Fulton County schools, all in vaccine desert areas. And I can send you the names of those schools. We will be back starting next weekend for round 2 at those schools. And we're doing something similar with Atlanta Public Schools too. So we are working at every opportunity with Dr. Looney and his team to meet that need. And we agree. And there are statistics on school children that we will start including, and I will get some stuff out to the group. So
but I would be very interested in as we talk about this, of hearing that information when you present to us. We just closed the school down yesterday.
Yeah, you're exactly right, sir. And to tell you the truth, with the Delta variant, it attacked unvaccinated people, and the group that was unvaccinated mostly was younger adults and children.
That's my point.
A lot more people got sick through the Delta variant because of that.
That's my point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Fulton County for the partnership with the city of East Point. I mean, all cities, but also working with us at our sites to really increase the vaccination rate and make testing and vaccinations available. We're greatly appreciative. What was shared with me previously, and I'd love to be able to receive it again, was the vaccination rate for my city. And so I think that would be helpful as we're looking at, the vaccination rates overall as a county. It's good to see that the numbers are going up, but I also believe we've been having increases within our city. I know we went from like 17 to 31%. I'd love to see where we are today with vaccinations in the city of East Point. And then on the case count numbers, I know now we're showing really the trends, and it's good to see the negative, the decrease in number of cases over the last 14 days. When we first started the epidemiology reports, we used to see the number of cases. Like we'd have like we could see the increase in the actual number. So right now it's like we had 205 new cases 14 days ago, and now we have 105, and then we get the, increase, decrease. It would be helpful, I would like to know like how many cases we have in our city, or how many cases we've had historically, right? Like the combination of that number. And initially we were receiving the actual case numbers. The trend data does help, so I'm not suggesting that we exclude that. It gives us an idea of kind of, how much the spread is, how much of a spread is happening. But I would love to have the vaccination rates by city, definitely for the city of East Point, and as well as, is it possible to go back to case numbers, as well as the trend data?
So I will pass that information on to the Board of Health and their EPI team. Generally, anytime we make suggestions, they'll include it in the EPI report. If you're not getting the EPI report, I will try and make sure that the mayors get on the distribution list. It's the closest thing we have to a breakdown by city. The state really breaks it down by county. So the EPI report breaks the city findings down in a couple different ways. So we'll make sure that you get that, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, Mayor Bodie? I will come back to him. Commissioner Abdul Rahman?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to weigh in on what Mayor Bill Edwards was speaking about. I wanted to just openly thank the county manager and his efforts with the incentives with Fulton County, and also Fulton County leadership with Dr. Looney, as well as Francesca Warren and Kimberly Dove. I was able to pretty much get to all the events at all the schools on the South Fulton corridor, and I had an opportunity to speak with the staff that was there, as well as the parents that were in line. And even though I don't have the numbers in front of me per se, Mayor Edwards, those parents that I talked to, I thought it was ironic that 90% of the parents that I talked to that were in line waiting with their children for the incentives had been vaccinated, but the children hadn't. And so I asked them, what made you come out today? And they said it was the incentive cards. And so kudos again. I wanted to thank the county manager for getting on that and making that a reality. But more importantly, I wanted the mayors to know that the incentive cards are working. I don't know, and maybe the county manager, maybe we can have a conversation about this later. But if we can incorporate any of those younger people, those students, in our efforts to educate individuals to get vaccinated, I think that will help us in attacking those numbers. Because of all the schools that I went to Banneker, Westlake, Tri-Cities, Creekside. When I talked to the parents, all of the parents were, well, not all, but maybe 90% of the parents had already vaccinated. What made them bring their children out was because of the incentive. But I asked the children, would they have a problem? Was it the card that made them come out? And to my surprise, it was the fact that the parent had the interest in them bringing them out. That time that they had to spend with the parent to come out to get vaccinated. So for whatever it's worth, whatever educational tools that we have at our disposal to include the youth and maybe bring the youth in to help with us to get those parents to make sure that they get those kids vaccinated, I think it would be great. But once again, I just wanted to tell the county manager and Fulton County Health Department and those involved that the incentives are working, and thank you.
Did he leave us? Mayor Bodie?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I apologize, I'm having computer problems. Just to address the fact of our percentages down here being up, and of course, here again, I think a couple of people have already addressed the fact it's not because of the shots not being unavailable. It's just, the people making the decision, because, for weeks now, we operate at 595 Main Street, which is our community center, and that's from 8 till noon every day, Monday through Friday. And we've got signs up, we've got banners up. You walk in, there's no wait. They get the shots this week. They started getting their boosters. So I don't know any other way other than like the commissioner spoke about some incentives on that, but it's not for the lack of them being able to get the shot, because anybody that wants a shot, whether they're from Noonan, Georgia, passing through Main Street, 29 Highway, anybody can stop and get it. So that's kind of where we're at. And like I said, I just want people to understand it's not a question of being in Palmetto and you can't get your shot. You got to go a long ways to get the shot. It's right here in the middle of town, so it's available if they'll take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other questions or comments? Mayors, commissioners? All right, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayors. The next subject is the emergency rental assistance. I'll ask Anna Roach, our Chief Operating Officer, and Dr. Rochelle, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, to talk about this. But I want to say to everyone, but to their credit, this has just been an enormous success. Hopefully you saw the AJC article this week that credited us from fully expending our first tranche of money, the 18 million that we received. We're now well into the second. In fact, we'll get through that pretty rapidly. We have been recognized by the U.S. Treasury Department as one of the most productive in the nation, along with 3 or 4 other counties. So one of the hopes that we have is a reallocation of funds to more productive places, which we have clearly been. So that program still has a lot of potential associated with it due to our ability to manage it. So Anna Roach, if you would take us through, along with Dr. Rochelle, the program and what the prospects are.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and mayors of Fulton County. As the county manager stated, I just wanted to draw your attention to a few highlights within our emergency rental assistance program. Provide some metrics and numbers as to where we are, quick statistics on results, and then close with a slide that describes another and related topic of interest, which is mortgage assistance, not administered by the county, instead administered by the state, and where they are with their program. So starting with this slide in front of you, I did want to draw the commissioners and the mayor's attention to some highlights about our program here in the last week or so. We have fully expended our first ERA1 funds, which, as you know, was $18 million. And we received a portion of ERA2, and we are in phase 2. Which was closing out some funds from phase 1, but more significantly, launching and expending the funds that we received in ERA2. We are expending at a pace of about $1 million per week. Some weeks it's more, some weeks it's less. And more significantly, our partner, PNN, whom we've outsourced the operating side of this to, they've notified us as of last Thursday that $1.1 million pace is anticipated to increase here in the next week or so, as we're now fully transitioned to them. So in the first couple of weeks, we had some normalizing of the pace of expending funds, but now we expect that to kick up even more. They've been great partners, and we appreciate the work that they've done to help us get these funds out the door. We do expect to exhaust what we have in-house or in hand for ERA2 funds by mid to end October. If you recall, we received a total of $24 million in ERA2 funds. The county has only received the first tranche, which was $10 million. We did meet the criteria to apply to Treasury to draw down the second tranche of funds. We submitted the request to Treasury to do so, and we await their response. But given the pace at which we're expending funds, we plan to follow up with Treasury, because here in just the next few weeks, we expect that we will be exhausted in terms of the funds we have on hand for ERA 2. We were recognized, as the manager stated, by U.S. Treasury as a high-performing jurisdiction for the expenditure of ERA funds, which means we are well-positioned to receive additional funding from Treasury. If you've been following the emergency rental assistance activity at the federal level, they do plan to recapture funds from underperforming jurisdictions and redistribute those funds to high-performing jurisdictions. And so based on information we've received from our partners and the pace at which we've been expending these funds, we do believe that we're well-positioned to receive additional funding when Treasury begins their process of reallocation. So we're very proud of the work that has been done here in emergency rental assistance, and we're glad to be one of the top high-performing jurisdictions across the country in this area. Next slide, please. So far we've gotten approximately 14,000 applications initiated within our system for phase 2. There are approximately 7,000 of those applications that are fully submitted. The other about 7,000 are somewhere in the process to be completed and deemed submitted within our system so we can adjudicate it. And then we have adjudicated approximately 4,794 applications. All in all, that means that we have distributed approximately $9.2 million in our phase 2 funds. And again, here we're looking at completing our distribution of what we have on hand in the next several weeks. So we look forward to that, but we also look forward to receiving our second tranche of funding from Treasury so that we can complete ERA 2. And we do also look forward to additional rental assistance in the reallocation process that Treasury has noticed jurisdiction that they will undertake in the next several weeks. Next slide. Mortgage assistance has been a priority for our Board of Commissioners, and because the state of Georgia received, as it's indicated here, approximately $354 million to administer a mortgage assistance program across the state. Fulton County has held off on instituting its own mortgage assistance program, principally because of the lessons we've learned around the complications of having multiple jurisdictions administering programs that require Treasury compliance. But one of the things that we've done is remain in constant contact with the state about the progress of their program. And we continue to monitor their website to see where we are or where the state is in administering their program. So according to the state of Georgia, they have submitted their plan to Treasury to draw down the mortgage assistance funds. Next slide, please. However, according to the state, the Treasury has not authorized any of those funds to be expended as of yet. And so the State Department of Community Affairs is among many jurisdictions that are still awaiting approval from Treasury to move forward with their mortgage assistance program. So they have not kicked off their program yet. They have made available on their website a link to where constituents can click on that link, enter their information, and be first to receive notification when the system gets started. But the actual application process has not started with DCA as of yet. Next slide, please. DCA did put in place a pilot program, which they are running in the interim between now and when they are permitted to kick off the mortgage assistance program at the state level. That interim program, the information about how to access that interim program or pilot program, as they're calling it, is on the DCA website. And the information on how to access that program is also on this slide as well, if you are interested. The Brenda McGee is the one who is running that program at the state level. Her email address is presented there for you, as well as the phone number that can be accessed, that to access the state mortgage assistance program. That's their pilot program, which is in between their launch of the federal program. That's all the information we have. Certainly here in Fulton, we hoped that this mortgage assistance program would be further along, but we're constrained waiting for the state to move forward with the program, and they can't move forward until Treasury gives them the go-ahead to do so. So that's the update we have on mortgage assistance at this time. Next slide. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have from emergency rental assistance and mortgage assistance. I am here to answer any questions available, and so is Dr. Rochelle, who has been the leader responsible for the day-to-day management of this program.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Excuse me, Mayor Carhurst, followed by Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Yes, thank you all so much. My question this morning is, the city of Fairburn has allocated funding under community initiative for emergency rental assistance. Is there a mechanism in place by Fulton County to make sure that there's not a duplication of services between Fulton County and our cities?
There are a couple of ways we can address that, Mayor Carhurst. As you know, and as we've reported to this group from the beginning, Fulton County established a publicly reporting website on all of our mortgage assistance transactions. We do not report the names and addresses of applicants or awardees, but there is a plethora of information and data on the progress of our program publicly reported on the website. We're also glad to provide detailed information to your city in order for us to be able to validate that we are not duplicating funding to any one individual. We do have a similar system in place with the state of Georgia, because they are now allowing for applications and funding within Fulton County. So that it's important for us to make sure for Treasury compliance requirements that we're not duplicating funding. So we have set up a mechanism with the state, and we're glad to do that with your jurisdiction as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
I just want to have a couple things, but I want to start by saying thank you and great job, great impact to Ms. Roach, as well as Dr. Rochelle, to really be leading the country in getting the money to the people. You know, it's one thing to have the funds be allocated and have it available to assist with rental and housing, right? The basic fundamental need of housing. But to be able to stand up a program that actually gets millions of dollars to people in need is more than commendable and is absolutely impactful. So thank you so much for all that you're doing with this work and making sure that it's getting to the people who need it, because that is absolutely critical. So I just wanted to really say thank you. Keep up with great work. I know that we've had a lot of collaboration and coordination with our staff in the city of East Point and the grants that the county awarded us for financial assistance. We greatly appreciate that as well. I think we are on to something that definitely will outlast and outlive this pandemic. There will be a system change, a much needed system change of the way that we can collaborate to bridge the gaps and meet the needs of our residents who are absolutely in need and look to government, because government is supposed to be of the people, for the people, by the people. I think we are showing that when we work together, we're absolutely able to leverage and scale up and maximize and multiply, right, impact on the people that we serve. So again, thank you so much for all that you're doing. I know that there are challenges, but you have definitely worked through them to make sure that we can again help people. So thank you for being people focused. Thank you for making sure that we're bridging those gaps. Thank you for all that you're doing to help people during this difficult time, because this is really what government is about. So thank you for caring. It shows what can happen when you have people running programs who care about the people, that they're actually able to get the resources to the people. So thank you so much.
Mayor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to really echo the adulation and also the ongoing collaboration of what we've been doing together in making sure that our citizens, especially those who are in a time of the greatest need when it comes to rental assistance, and now even moving towards mortgage assistance. I was in Washington, D.C. early part of this week and had an opportunity to speak with Treasury Secretary Yellen and some of her team. And, it's just something when out of all of the counties in the United States, and they point out you live in one of the greatest counties in this nation, they gave great praise to what we're doing in our county. And I heard it out of her mouth, and that gave me such a sense of just thankfulness that we have some great leaders. And, as my colleagues earlier have stated, as long as we continue to keep this train of positivity, but collaboration going, there is nothing that can stop us. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, certainly the county manager and the entire team. Your work is noticed. So thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? All right, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. The last subject was elections. We'll allow Rick to address the audit and the management response. I did just want to highlight to the mayors, we are very close to finalizing a new warehouse space that is just south of the 74 and Oakley intersection there in Fairburn. It will give us about a third of that will go to elections and make up everything that we do in elections now, from absentee voting to tabulating. Will give us obviously more secure, more efficient space. It also will provide for clerk records, other storage needs, as well as a very secure evidence facility for the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, as well as police and marshal. So it's going to be again, a phenomenal asset that we hope to close on. And it also represents $4 to $5 million in savings over a 10-year period from all the consolidated space that we will be able to get rid of. In addition, in elections, we've developed a good, I think, alternative plan to look at all operational aspects of election, not using an external consultant, but using internal resources and some folks that have been trained on Six Sigma approaches. So we're pleased to get started with that. And we have a detailed plan for this municipal election that I think puts us in good stead and allows us to scale up for 2022. So we continue to collaborate with Rick and with the elections effort. So Rick, I will turn it over to you to talk about the audit and the management response.
Mr. Manager, give us one moment. We're running a bit ahead of schedule and we're just getting Mr. Barron on the line. Give us
So, Mr. Chairman, all these politicians didn't talk enough, so we're running ahead of schedule. Is that
I was gonna ask for any random thoughts, but I better not do that.
I suspect that that's about to change.
Oh, my God.
Is that my buddy, Mr. Mayor Bodker?
No,
It is. And I want you to know I've been sick all week, but I have saved my voice for just this section.
well, good. We'll catch up then, Mike.
Don't be shy, Mr. Mayor.
I'll try not to be.
That's the least of our worries, that Mayor Bodker being shy.
Not on this topic, I won't. I do want to commend Mr. Chairman, your team for all the topics we've covered today. Fulton County's doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Corbett? What's the problem?
Getting Rick on the line.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Houseman?
are we going to have a presentation from our elections director?
Yes, we're waiting for.
Commissioner Houseman, Mr. Barron, he is logging on now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What did she say? He's. How long does it take to log in?
How about
Do
the
we have
break?
do we have an SOP for logging into Zooms?
Apparently not.
How about the Braves, y'all?
What?
You were muted.
Ms. Corbett?
Yes, sir. He's just having a slight technical problem. And I'm getting him situated. Just one moment.
Good morning, everyone. This is Richard Barron, Director of Registration and Elections. Sorry, I had issues.
Okay. Welcome. Mr. Chairman. Go ahead. You have the floor.
All right, thank you. I've been asked to review the county auditor's report of the Registration and Elections Department for the 2021 election cycle. And there were several findings that the county auditor came up with, and we provided our response. I've been told that you have received responses or received the audit report, and I'm unsure if you received the responses, but I'm going to go through those. Now, two things to start. We, in the Registration and Elections Department, we saw a budget increase over the second half of 2020 of 250%. We also, the findings did not indicate that there were no had no effect on the registration and elections, any of the elections in 2020 or 2021. And in addition, there was no finding of any misuse of public funds. But let's go to the first finding, which was lack of departmental standard operating procedures. We turned in several standard operating procedures to the county auditor's office. What the main finding that the county auditor found is that we need to develop more departmental SOPs to reflect operating environment and standards of practice to ensure consistent execution of day-to-day operations and business processes. Essentially, what this means is that we need more routine tasks that are outlined for each individual job in or task within the department. We turned in, we have some manuals that were produced by vendors, and we are currently now, we've already written 96 new or edited or updated 96 standard operating procedures, which is probably about halfway to where we want to be. Those have been across 3 different divisions: the admin division, the elections division, and also in the registration division. And I think one thing our management team that'll help this is the management team has turned over in the registration division over the last several months. We have a new leadership team in the registration division. And the other thing that I would mention is that we have established also an absentee ballot division. And that division is just getting underway and will handle all of the absentee by mail. And they are also creating all of the new standard operating procedures when it comes to that part of the department. The second finding has to do with inconsistent procurement procedures. And what the county auditor found and recommended is that they recommend that we adhere to consistent procurement practices to mitigate and alleviate disputes and misinterpretation. There were, what he found is that there were several things done out of order in 2020 where POs were sometimes produced before the requisitions were entered. There should be a consistent practice of a purchase requisition being entered, then the purchase order, goods and receipt, goods are received and invoices are received. That should be the standard order. So we have, one thing that we are doing is hiring a financial systems manager. I think some of the reasons for that we indicated in finding 2 in our response are that 2020 created a lot of challenges. As I outlined earlier, our budget increased from 17 million up to 44 million in 2020. We normally have a general fund and election budgets. We also had CARES monies. We had multiple year non-agency funds, and we had 3 different grants from the Center for Civic and Tech Life and the Southern Poverty Law Center. That just created a lot of challenges for our administrative division staff of 2. And, it was a learning experience and going forward. They have begun to write all sorts of standard operating procedures. We've also been in touch with purchasing to get a tutorial to make sure that we as a department understand all of the purchasing practices and the order in which we have to make sure that we are consistent when we order goods or services. We do the purchase requisition, purchase order, goods receipt, and then get the invoice receipt. And then that is a segue into the next one, which is untimely payment of invoices. What the county auditor found is that 12 general fund invoices received from the sample, about 83% were not submitted timely for payment. With regard to the grant funds, 6 out of 51 or 12% were not paid timely. I think with the different funds and also with the different funds that we were using and limited staff, it just created a lot of work for my department. We stated in the response above that unprecedented circumstances and events of 2020 and 2021 created scenarios when it became difficult to follow purchasing procedures as we were given invoices from other departments and other parties which were involved in these transactions. The financial systems manager, which is in its 3rd round of interviews today, will help with the department going forward, not only to, and that position will not only help with tracking all of these items as we go forward, but it will also allow us to update standard operating procedures with someone new within the department that can put a new, give us a new voice in that regard, and look over what we have created already and what we need to do going into the future. The 4th finding was a lack of supporting documentation. This item was pertaining to Dominion voting systems. And when we used Dominion in October of 2020, we had 26 warehouse staff go down with COVID within 7 days. It affected the way we had planned to do logic and accuracy testing. We had to hire Dominion to help us manage that process. We did an emergency measure to get them to come in and bring staff in order to manage that at the Georgia World Congress Center. There was an initial PO cut for $450,000. We were limited in management at that time. Dominion kept track of all of the timesheets and on-site support. We need to do in the future, if we have a situation like this arise, which we've written into a recent contingency plan, is to make sure that we track the hourly and daily attendance by contractors if we have an emergency such as that in the future. One of our other partners that we use for supplemental staff have assist portals set up for us to do that tracking. And the Dominion, when they came back with the bill that was 4 times the amount, they never indicated to us that they had exceeded the PO. So we had to go into negotiations with the county attorney's office and purchasing in order to reduce that bill. And I think having a financial systems manager and also a contingency plan in place to make sure that we have management. We've also increased staff since then. This year, we've added 9 more staff, which will enable us to have more middle management. That middle management ability, which was something that came up earlier in the year in an STB monitors report, will help us manage the large number of temporary and supplemental staff that we bring on board every year. And we increased last year, we went from 2 locations that we were managing up to 12, and it stretched us thin. So when we lost 26 staff to COVID in 7 days, it really stretched our resources even thinner. The 5th finding is improper payment of services. And the recommendation there is that the department adhere to purchasing procedures and conduct supervisory reviews of all invoices prior to submitting for payment to mitigate and alleviate invoicing errors and improper payment for services. During the 2020 election cycle, Atlanta Public Schools requested that their COVID-19 cleaning contractors be paid directly by Fulton County. APS stated that by waiting for reimbursement from Fulton County to pay their vendors, this would interfere with their budget. So APS provided us with a list of their contracted vendors, and the vendors were provided to Fulton County we provided the vendors with Fulton County voter or vendor registration instructions. And then after the audit concluded, we did get that correspondence from APS stating that they did request this of us. The 6th finding, which would be inadequate safeguarding of assets. We had some routers that were misplaced. We have since purchased an inventory tracking system, which will allow us to bring ourselves as far as inventory management and delivery of equipment into the 21st century in terms of how we track our inventory. The 15 routers in question have been deactivated by the vendor. And in the future, we are currently now labeling for this new inventory system, putting tracking, barcoding, tracking stickers on all of our inventory. That will slowly be implemented. We are going to implement a portion of the inventory tracking system for the municipal election and then have it fully implemented by the time the May primary rolls around. In the 7th finding was a failure to comply with grant requirements return of unused funds. This had to do with the Southern Poverty Law Center's $85,000 grant. They helped us to purchase drop boxes for the 2020 election. The remaining funds were not returned to SPLC timely, according to the county auditor's office. And finding 8 also has to do with the Southern Poverty Law Center's grant, which had a requirement that we provide a direct link to the Fulton County website displaying the amount of absentee ballots that were returned to the Registration and Elections Board for the 2020 election using the absentee ballot drop boxes. The county auditor in both of these findings that dealt with the Southern Poverty Law Center grant recommended that we implement the necessary controls to ensure compliance with the grant guidelines. And we have since received a letter from the Southern Poverty Law Center that went to the county auditor's office that indicated that they felt that we complied with their requirements and that they had no issues with how we returned the funds and used and provided information. Finding 9, which is inadequate department accountability and oversight of financial transactions. They recommend that departmental managers provide oversight over all departmental activities, particularly those involving financial transactions, as money management bears primary responsibility for maintaining financial accountability and control over departmental funds. In addition, management should be intimately involved and knowledgeable of financial matters within the department to exert meaningful oversight and to make sure that employees are properly trained and informed of policies and procedures to effectively perform their job duties and responsibilities. I think, all of these things fall on the department and myself to manage. I think circumstances that we received a lot of help last year and assistance from the county manager's office in areas of procurement, staffing, budgeting, purchases from various funds. And all of this created various situations where tasks were being handled and processed from parties outside the department. So in the future, if this sort of situation arises, we just have to make sure that all of our standard operating procedures are followed, that we are creating, editing, and updating. And again, our financial systems manager, we should be extending an offer on that position either today or on Monday. And because we're concluding the 3rd round of interviews for that today. So I can take any questions that you have on that. I also, if you have any questions about, we also have a mailing that is going out to all the voters in Fulton County shortly that will have all the early voting sites listed. And so I can answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. The lineup is as follows. Mayor Bodker.
Mr. Barron, I apologize in advance. One, my voice is not at its best since I've been sick this week. And second, I'm grumpier than I normally would be. And many who've dealt with me know that even a good mic is not necessarily a great one. If you take a step back and you read this audit, and I have a hard time not reading this without putting my accounting hat on, what does this audit say to you in a general sense about the management of your department?
Well, I think that what we have to do, I think to the finding at the beginning of having standard operating procedures when it comes to making sure that we follow everything that we're supposed to do, making sure we do it consistently and in an orderly fashion, that we have opportunities for growth in those areas. I think also we did have some challenges, but I think ultimately we just have to make sure that we follow all the guidelines within the county. And I think we're making steps so far to do that.
So, Mr. Barron, you've been with the county since 2013 in this position, correct?
Yes.
Why did these standard operating procedures not exist prior to the pandemic?
I think, well, we do have some standard operating procedures in place. I think they need to be much more extensive than what we've had. And I think that what this audit showed, and especially once I went through it, it just showed that we need to have SOPs written for every single task that we do, rather than just relying on a general project plan or basic checklists. We need to have things that are outlined so that if somebody from the outside sits down and is asked to do a duty, if we have too much work placed on two different people and we need to give them help, somebody needs to be able to sit down with these SOPs and be able to do that duty without even asking for help. So that's what we're aiming for in the future. Mostly we just used SharePoint and regular our regular vendor manuals to follow procedures.
So when we go to the findings related to the order in which transactions were conducted, and it's hard for me, again, not to see this as an accountant with plenty of experience in this, the basic concept of requisition of purchase order to three-way match to invoicing is a basic for accountants. I would imagine as the manager of a department, that's not a new concept to you either.
No, I think what happened in 2020, which was different than other years, is that there were a lot of emergency procurements and we were receiving help from outside the department. And I think at some points, the communication, not only between my department and other departments, which were helping us with some of the procurements, and between purchasing and us just needed to be better. I think there were, I think when you have the way we were working with others, I think it wasn't the help that we got the help that we needed, but what we also needed to do was ensure that anything that originated from outside, externally from the department, needed to come through the department first, rather than having something ordered somewhere else. Then we get the PO and the requisition hasn't been entered. I mean, there were things that were done out of step, and a lot of it just had to do with, how it just, in my years doing this, we've never seemed to have any sort of situation like this that we had in 2020. And I think also we had 4 more budgets that we were managing with the same number of staff. And I think that the demands on the staff just created a scenario in which we did things out of step.
Do you understand those same procedures would have prevented the overpayment or the even acceptance of invoices related to the contractor, the Dominion situation?
Yes.
And it's still, I'm sitting here scratching my head wondering how there wasn't an awareness of such a large budgeted line item that was going over budget more than 4 times the amount. Well, how does that even happen, Rick?
When we hired Dominion, we asked them to essentially manage that process out there. They kept track of all of they brought in all of the staff, they brought in, and they basically managed their staff that was out there. And
you gave them a blank check?
What's that?
You gave them a blank check? You just let them fill out the check for themselves?
We had a $450,000 PO, and that's initially what they estimated that it would cost for that.
Did they have, in the contract, were there any responsibilities for change orders?
What's that?
Was there any responsibilities in the contract for change orders?
I don't
Is there
know.
a change order approval process in place?
No, there wasn't.
So they basically had a blank check. They could write whatever they wanted and just say they did it.
They do have the documentation of everyone that was there every day, but
Great frickin' management. Great management, man. And these are federal funds that you were screwing around with, correct?
some of them were election funds, some of them were grant funds, and some were federal funds.
I'll let my colleagues speak because I'm going to lose my shit if I don't.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Hello?
Commissioner Hall.
Yes, Commissioner Hall, you have the floor.
Okay. First, I want to say to my friend, Mayor Bodker, please don't allow yourself to get into a space that other people have already painted you negatively in, because you're better than that. So that being said, I do want to address a few things. Mr. Barron, there are just certain things that a manager is supposed to know to do. And I'll give you just an example using myself. I was the chief of staff to the former commissioner who sat in this seat, as you very well know. And as a manager, I know that you need to onboard people. You need to have standard operating procedures. You need to have training. There are just things that are a general, normal part of the management process. And the problem here is that the audit and so many of your actions have proven to reveal that a lot of just the standard procedures of being a manager were not followed. And that is why we are here today. That is why we had an audit. That's why we've been having all these issues with the Department of Registrations and Elections. And hear me clearly, I didn't say the Board of Registrations and Elections. I said the Department of Registrations and Elections, which you are the leader of. As a commissioner, I don't know how many elected officials, my colleagues from the cities or from the county, I don't know how many of them have standard operating procedures, but guess what? I do. I have standard operating procedures. I train every single person in my office. I train them personally, and they can very well speak up and confirm that for you. It's just management 101. So these are some of the main problems that stick out to all of us about what is going on with your department. And then one of the things, as I listened to you address the audit, what concerned me was that there were so many areas that you addressed where you said, we were told we need to do this, or we realized that we need to do this. There were too many of those areas and not enough areas where you were saying, we have done this, or we did do that. And that concerns me. So it makes me, it makes it seem like you don't know how to manage your own department. And then I don't know who it was that asked the question just a few moments ago about how do you feel about, I think it was, how do you feel about the management issues that were raised in the audit, something like that. And I really did, I was waiting for you to really answer that, and you really did not. And I was trying to see, were you skirting around it? And I really believe you weren't skirting around it. I just believe you didn't answer it. And I don't know if it's because you missed what the question actually was, but I want to ask you that question again. How do you feel about the negative aspects of what have been exposed about the management in your department?
Well, I mean, I'm not happy with it. It's one of those, that's why we are working hard right now to make sure that we make everything that's in this audit, we are looking at to make sure that we are correcting these things so that going forward, we don't have this again. So that when Mr. Nix comes back later, none of these items, he's going to have findings on these items again, because we have to make sure that we're stewards of the public funds, whether they're grant funds, whether they're federal funds, or whether they're local funds. We have to make sure that all of the money is managed properly. And when it comes to standard operating procedures, those things need to be in place, whether it's in the admin division, which oversees the financial part, or whether it's in the elections division. So, I mean, I'm unhappy with the report. I think, so I take responsibility for it, but I also, I think there were extenuating circumstances last year, but I also, and I don't mean to say that we were taking orders from everywhere, but I think we were getting help from so many places that I think sometimes the breadth of the department increased to a level last year that I had never managed before. So when it got to be where we had 400 or 500 supplemental staff, when Dominion came in or some other things, and we had lost, a quarter of our staff, the challenges were great. But as I look back through this, I'm unhappy with every part of it. And that's why we've made so many changes going forward. We went out, we asked the commissioners to create 9 new positions this summer. You guys did that. We have been interviewing for those, filling those positions. We've created an absentee division in order for us to correct any deficiencies there, to make sure we get the SOPs written for that. We've got this financial systems manager that we're going to be bringing on board to make sure that not only do we have help for the other people in the admin division, but so that we can make sure that we have SOP that are written well in that part of the department. We are making lots of changes, and the staff is working right now to make sure that every single task that we do has a step-by-step instruction of what we need to do going forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barron.
Mayor Gilvin. Commissioner Houseman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Sorry, it took me a second to get off of unmute. First of all, I want to start off with good stuff. I want to thank Dick Anderson and the Fulton County management team, because as I looked through that audit, it looked like Dick basically had to run the elections department in this last cycle. And we're grateful that he stepped up. It was very frustrating to see the amount of time, energy, and money that your Fulton County manager and his staff had to put in to trying to correct all of the ridiculous oversight that had taken place in 2020. And it's embarrassing. I just want to be honest with you guys. It was remarkable earlier as we heard so many great things that Fulton County had accomplished over the last year and a half. Standing up programs like the rental resistance, the vaccination programs and things like that had not even existed. Those were issues that did not exist in that way 2 years ago even. And yet your management team, your staff had been able to put together programs that put out the money that people needed, services that all of our residents needed throughout the county. And yet it made it even that much more frustrating, quite frankly, to sit through the last 30 minutes of hearing excuses why someone who had been the director of the elections department for 8 years was in complete disarray and spent so much time blaming it on the changes and COVID. And look, I get it. We've all been affected. All of our municipalities, every county in the state of Georgia was affected. But, I'll be honest, if we had the opportunity to go to an outside vendor, if state would allow us to hire someone to efficiently run our elections, I would have already asked our council to put out an RFP 6 months ago, but it's not that easy. I'm a little envious of our neighbors down in Mountain Park because they are able to hire another county elections department. And remarkably, they didn't seem to have the challenges that the Fulton elections department did. And you know what? They had COVID in Cherokee County, and they had it in all the other counties around us. So I really don't have any solutions or recommendations other than the fact that I want the commissioners, and I do appreciate Commissioner Hall's comments. I know y'all are in a tough spot, but I will share that I think those of us that have been frustrated with the management of the Fulton County Elections Department, I can't speak for other mayors, but the ones I have spoken to share some of my frustrations about the things that have gone on over the past few years. And as I look back at over the past 12 months, at one point, the Board of Elections is kind of where that responsibility rested. And we've had great relationships over the years with the Fulton County Commission. But commissioners, I'm just letting you know from my perspective, once you chose to override the Board of Elections and retain Mr. Barron, it's on you now. And so I do expect y'all to make sure it's right. And we've got an election cycle coming up in a few weeks here. Hopefully things will go well. But I'm not going into the next national statewide election cycle without a plan B, because our city, our residents demand it. They're tired of this mess. And look, I know there's a lot of politics involved in all of this stuff, and that's fine. Alpharetta's about 50-50 now. And none of our residents are excited about the mess that's been going on here, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. So that's not where I'm coming from at all. All I want to do is be able to look my constituents in the eyes after the next major election cycle and say, yes, it was run well, it was run efficiently, and the taxpayers here in Alpharetta didn't get stuck with a huge bill for services that nobody was even tracking or keeping up with. It's just absurd, and I'm frustrated, and I'm hopeful that the commission will resolve this as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Commissioner Houseman?
I see that Mayor Williams is in the queue. I'd really like to hear from our mayors, and if you would allow me to speak after we hear from all our mayors, I would appreciate it.
Mayor Williams?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Hausman. Look, I never like to criticize anyone, especially in public. And I have a habit here in Union City, if there's going to be a bit of disenchantment or correction, I do it in private. But we're talking about our county. And the history of the Fulton County elections over these past 8 or so years have been such a disappointment. And Mr. Barron, that has been at your feet, at your leadership. And one of the things that I'm very disappointed in hearing your report today, it was excuse after excuse after excuse. That is not the mark of a leadership, of a leader. And one of the things that you brought out was, we're responsible for the funds, and we're the stewards of the funds of the citizens. And certainly when we talk about getting funding from the state or the federal level, oftentimes when you get these types of findings, there are often exorbitant penalties and fines. And the disappointment, and I have to go back to this, the disappointment in our elections process over the years. I hear Mayor Gilvin saying if he had the opportunity to do what Mountain Park is able to do to bring somebody else in, I tell you, I have that same adulation for my friend in Palmetto. They do their own elections with no problems. And I tell you, it's embarrassing. It is totally embarrassing. And what concerns me, Mr. Barrett, is that you are at the leadership. And there are 4 things that I want to point out. Either you are lost as a leader, either you're reckless, irresponsible, or you just don't care. And I don't think that's the case. I don't know what the issue is, but those are the things that I come up with, and I'm very disappointed that we're here having this discussion, because when we get an audit and the findings are as severe as what I'm hearing, because to me, those are severe because those are taxpayer dollars that are used to make sure that we're doing what we should be doing. And then we hear excuse after excuse after excuse as to why we weren't doing them, and we're going to do this, and we're going to start doing that. When are we going to start running a stellar elections department? We've got to do better. I don't know what the answer is, but Mr. Barron, it falls at your feet, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Holiday Ingram. Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So as we all know in government, personnel matters are generally dealt with in executive session and not in public. And so I'm not going to get into too much around, the performance per se, because 1, I don't have the authority to make those decisions, and 2, I think those are better handled in a different forum. But what I will say is that my paramount concern is that people know how to vote and what options they have, that people are registered to vote to be able to exercise their options, and that after being registered to vote, being able to vote, that they have expanded access to the ballot. Because while yes, the primary election last year was horrific, there was improvement for the general election. And then this audit points out a number of operational challenges that, the appropriate people need to address. But what really worked was expanded access to the ballot box. And we know Senate Bill 202 made a number of restrictions to that, right? And so this whole conversation, unfortunately, and I was just on Political Rewind not too long ago talking about it, and unfortunately, the political overtones or undertones of any of these types of discussions do not go, are basically the elephant in the room. So I'm not speaking from a party perspective or political perspective, speaking from a people perspective. And at the end of the day, what I care most about is people being able to vote, to access the ballot, and once they vote, have their votes counted, and to ensure that there are processes and procedures in place that make that happen. As Mayor Williams said, Mayor Bodie is the only person on this call who's not subject to this because they run their own elections quite efficiently. And we all don't have those options. So we're relying on the county and the people that the county puts in place and the procedures or processes or whatever accountability, we're relying on the county to make sure that that happens. But what I care about is not just the next major election. I care about all elections. And we have one coming up. We'll have one in a primary in the spring of next year. We'll have elections. That's one thing for sure. Every year there is an election, and people must be able to exercise that sacred right to vote in a way that gets that vote counted, and the operations behind that make sure that happens. And so I'm extremely concerned about, one, just the changes that Senate Bill 202 has brought and how that impacts the elections, the upcoming elections. 2, what are the plans that are in place to ensure a fair election where people have access to the ballot, they're able to cast their ballot, and every vote is counted, regardless of who they vote for, regardless of their party affiliation. That is a sacred right as an American for that to happen. And so I'm interested in, because as we talk about the audit, I get that's one thing, but what are the processes and procedures that are in place to ensure that not only the next major election, all elections are done where there's fair? And I will commend you, like there were a number of investigations into fraud or allegations of fraud that were unfounded. I did see some mention of that in this audit, right? But at the end of the day, there were none found. And as we move forward, we don't expect any to happen. What are the processes and procedures that are going to be in place? Because the excuses of what happened before is one thing, but what you can control right now is what happens this day moving forward. And so what has been done to make sure that we have fair elections where everyone has the ability to cast their vote, has access to the ballot in a way that helps them allows them to cast their vote, and that every vote is counted?
Mayor Henry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to repeat what the other mayors have said before me, but in my estimation, this report is scathing. And what I heard Mr. Barron say a few minutes ago was that this department grew to a level that he could not manage. And I think that you all remember the Peter Principle. And I think that perhaps Mr. Barron, as a result of the Peter Principle, that the department grew to a level which he cannot control, he cannot manage. I have lost all faith in our elections in Fulton County. I am very actively looking for options not to have to deal with Mr. Barron, his department, and Fulton County in our elections coming up. And I will also tell you that I am getting pressure from the citizens of Roswell. We've got an early voting coming up in a couple of weeks, and people are not confident that this is going to be held in a manner that they're comfortable with. So, this can't wait. And I am not going to wait until the next election. I am not going to wait and see how things might improve, things that might be put into place when we obviously have a manager over this department that cannot deal with what he is charged to deal with. Thank you.
Again. Sure. Say it again.
What?
Mayor Barker.
I said Mayor Bodker.
I don't think he heard you.
What?
I don't think he heard you.
Mayor Bodker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. So I had my opportunity to ask questions, so now maybe I can give a viewpoint. I've had the good fortune of being able to start from scratch and manage a number of organizations. I've had the opportunity to participate in the management of our city and a number of not-for-profits. And in all of my time of hiring and unfortunately sometimes terminating employment, I have not seen mismanagement to this level. I have not been quiet about talking about this. I've tried to avoid the discussion of the election itself because that is what does introduce the political undertones. I was appreciative that our discussion today was going to be about operational issues because there are no politics involved in operations. And I'm sitting here astounded at the responses that we've received from Mr. Barron. If I were his hiring manager, I would be talking to HR today. And I implore the commissioners to look back at the recommendation of the Board of Elections who recommended termination and stop protecting Mr. Barron. We need to use the county for elections. You are the perfect economy of scale to manage elections, but we need to have faith that those elections are going to be run well. I've been in office since 2006, and all of the prior election department heads did not leave me wondering whether the election would be run well or not. It left me wondering the only question that I should be wondering, which is who's going to win or lose. And I also didn't have to question whether the costs were fair. I'm now questioning whether the bill of over $300,000 that we're expected to pay Fulton County will actually be real and legitimate expenses. Who knows? Maybe all of the bills that get turned in won't be monitored like the Dominion wasn't monitored. Yet my citizens are the ones who have to write that check. And so I implore the commissioners to look at what's right in front of you. And that is one of the most damning audit reports you could receive on operational issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Commissioner Houseman, you still want to be heard?
Yes, sir, I do. First of all, I want to thank the mayors for having this conversation and for all of your input. You know, this has been a very difficult year for all of us, especially in light of this. And Rick, I hope you can appreciate the sentiments that you heard today and where they came from. You've made some comments today that are very interesting, you know, around not only the management of the department, which I still have questions about, but you stated that it's our job to be good stewards of the public money that we've been entrusted with. And, you know, it begs the question, do you feel like you've done that?
Yes, I mean, I do feel that. And I think what I would like to do is when I arrived in 2013, we had, I encountered a department that would either have 3 or 6 early voting sites. The 2012 election went poorly. My vision was to give voters ballot access to make sure that everyone could vote easily. I told the board that by the 2020 or by the 2016 election, that we would have more than 50% of voters voting early. Over those years, we increased early voting sites. We worked with the commissioners to get funding. We made sure that we gave people access. We ran good elections between 2013 and 2016. That 2016 presidential election ran flawlessly. Since then, we have continued to give voters access to the ballot. Last year, even during 2020, after that June election, we had, with all of the challenges that came along with COVID, the 5 elections after the June election ran well. Even with our recounts confirmed the results. Those elections ran well. We processed more voters than we've ever processed in this county by over 100,000 voters. Not only that, my department made sure that January election ran perfectly. We gave all the voters ballot access. We had 38 drop boxes around the county. We had mobile buses. In 2019, I went to the commissioners and I said, I want to buy these 2 buses to have mobile voting. We had those things all over the place. We had more early voting sites than we ever had. We had more early voting sites in Fulton County than Cobb, Gwinnett, DeKalb, and Clayton combined. We had fewer problems and shorter lines than all of those counties, not only during early voting, but during election day. We have done everything to make sure. I went to the county manager last year. He helped get staff for us. We got the support, not only of the county manager's office, in order to get staff that was at home, that were being paid but weren't working to help us. We had one of the reasons that partnership worked so well between our department and the county manager's office was because we went to them, and I knew that you can count on the county manager to make sure that we don't have to deal with. He could streamline things between us and the other departments. Our elections last year, every county in June had issues, including us, and we had a lot of problems. But the next 5 elections, they ran well.
So, Mr. Barrett, and in the essence of time, I'm going to stop you here because I think your impression of what happened greatly differs from the people that have spoken today. I haven't heard anyone compliment our operations, okay? I've heard a lot of questions raised about the finances and the just basic management of the operation. And I've also heard criticism that we relied on the efforts and the input from the county management and his team in order to make sure that the elections did run as smooth as they did. But I mean, you know, you're kind of talking off both sides here, because you said you had so much money and so much staff, it was too much for you. But then you're saying the fact that you had it made it run smoothly. So I don't want to get into the details here. You know, I think we've rehashed it enough. I do want to ask you for a report that outlines all of the things that you say you're doing. We've gotten a verbal presentation today, but I don't have anything in writing that outlines the steps that you are taking in order to make sure that the city elections that we have starting in 2 weeks actually run properly. And I think that's the main goal of the day, is to make sure that our cities have confidence in our ability to conduct the elections that they're going to have in a few weeks. It was brought up about the fees that they're being charged. You know, based on this report, I don't blame them for questioning if in fact what they've been asked to pay for is legit. I think that we need to make sure that they have confidence in that as well. So I think you've got a lot of work to do after this meeting to show us that in fact you are putting things in place that will correct these problems in time for this upcoming election, and to make sure that the cities have confidence that what they're paying for is worth that investment. And that's really, I mean, I stand by the support of the Board of Registrations and Elections from months ago. Nothing has changed in my opinion to make my opinion change on that. And I appreciate the sentiments that have been given today on that regard too, but it takes a majority. Just want to remind everybody, it takes a majority.
Looks like the chairs left the room. I don't know if anybody else had their hand up.
Thank you for saying that, Commissioner Ellis. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Been involved in a lot of these discussions like this one today, and they all tend to follow the same pattern. I don't know what the Latin phrase for the thing speaks for itself is, but I think this discussion speaks for itself. And I would request to our, whether it's Jessica or her team or whoever, that the video or the recording of this session be sent and submitted to our Board of Registrations and Elections and all of the members of that board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak? Anyone else? All right, I did have one last thing that I'd like to say. I want to thank Mayor Bodker for what he said about, I don't know exactly how you said it, but it was something like there are no politics when speaking about operations. And so I want to reiterate that, because that's exactly what we're doing, is we're speaking about the operations of the Department of Registrations and Elections. And I also want to address the statement about this being a personnel issue. This is not a personnel issue. This is a public issue. This has been public. As soon as it got in the media, it was public. As soon as there was an audit, it became public. That audit is a public record now that people can access. And there is a process for audits by which any department that is being audited, that department head has a specific amount of time by which they are to respond. And we simply asked for Mr. Barron to be here today to let us know what his response was to the audit of his department. And so this was not something that had to be done in executive session, because We simply asked him to provide us with some insight into his response to the audit. Commissioner Morris, you keep unmuting. Did you want to speak?
No, that was accidental.
Oh, okay.
I
Does
think
anyone-
I heard enough from my colleagues and the good mayors here, and I could echo and ditto, but I won't.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Madam Vice Chair, I just want to say that I appreciate your comments following my first round of questions. You're right. I am better than that, and I apologize if I left the wrong impression. I hope that I made up for that somewhat in my second round. I want to continue to thank you and the commission for the hard work that you're doing. Observing this conversation today makes me realize just how hard your job is. But I still want to implore you all to not let up on this topic, and that I hope you will reconvene and reconsider prior decisions that you all have made.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Bodker. And so are there any other topics to discuss? Any topics left to discuss?
No further items.
All right, thank you. With no objections, meeting adjourned? Hearing no objections. Okay, bye-bye. All right, thank you, Mayor Bodie. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
I love you, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it. Bye-bye.